The civilizations of Meso-America kept very detailed records of their history and their heritage. And paintings. These paintings are now called codexes by the archaeologists and the anthropologists. One of these codexes describes a deity that's called Macuilxoshitl. This was their god of games. Hey, welcome again to my game room. I've gotten a number of requests from viewers to talk about this game, and so let's see how it goes. Patolli and its variants were played many centuries ago. Archaeologists have turned up evidence of the game as far as back as the Teotihuacanos, 200 years BC. All the major Central and South American civilizations played this game. The Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Zapotecs, the Mayans. And ever since New World archaeology became a thing in the 1800s, they have turned up evidence of this game being played. This stone sculpture is at the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore. It is the Aztec deity Macuilxoshitl, the patron god of gamers, and in this codex painting, he presides over a group of Patolli players. To acknowledge Macuilxochitl's presence in the game, they would always have an extra place at the table, and they would have a place where they could make little offerings to the god, hopefully buying his favor and the way that the game played out. In some cases, offerings would even be made on every roll of the dice. But at the end of the game, the winner of the game would also receive all of these offerings on behalf of the god Macuilxoshitl. Sounds like a nice custom. The first detailed account of the game was by Alfonso de Caso, and everything since then seems to substantiate what he wrote. I am surprised, though, that I couldn't find very many images to go with this presentation. There's this one, and there's this one, and that's about it. There's not much else out there. For a game that supposedly was played for 2,000 years throughout Central America, you'd think there was a little bit more to show for it. Patolli is basically a race game, not unlike Pachisi and other cruciform racetracks. There are a lot of opportunities for competition as you go around the track and block other players and send them back to the beginning, and a few spaces that have some special powers you want to take advantage of. But apparently, in addition to giving offerings to the god of games, there was also some kind of internal game betting between the players on occasion. I couldn't find any record of exactly how that worked, except that it was referred to as such. But people took their games very seriously. They would bet anything from blankets to beans, against the outcome of the game. And some people would even auction off themselves, their own servitude, for a period of time. There are records that say people would even bet their homes on a game. It just seems like quite a gambling addiction to me. And then there's this drawing. Not really sure what's going on here, but it looks pretty severe. This guy is being tortured, hanging over the top of Patolli board, or the remnants of same. That's some pretty serious stuff. If you want to recreate the gambling aspect of the game, there are ways that you can, bet peanuts and candy. I would definitely steer clear of the death and slavery stuff myself. Be that as it may, here's how to play Patolli. The cruciform board looks like this, and 2 to 4 players would sit between the arms of the board. Each player receives a set of pawns of a distinct color. For 2 players, each has 6 pawns. For 3 players, each has 5 pawns. And for 4 players, each has 4 pawns. The pawns begin the game off the board. The object is to get all of your pawns around a circuit of the board, as shown here, to your end point and off the board. Oh, and be sure that you have your little pile of treasure to risk during the game. This isn't really necessary, but it adds a lot of excitement to the game. And at the beginning of the game, each player must put a bit of treasure on the board for the god of games. Personally, I think the small candies are the very best treasure for this game, but you can even play the game without the treasures at all if you'd rather. The randomizer of choice seems to have been a set of 5 beans, or corn kernels, with a mark on one side. You could use coins or cowrie shells or stick dice, any binary item that will land one side up. Players each toss the beans into a shallow bowl, and each player in turn around the table would do the same. When a single bean turns up with a marked face up, the rest being face down, that player can start a pawn on the track in the space indicated. After a pawn is on the board, each face-up bean in the result is a move of one space along the track. The exception is a toss of 5. All the beans face up, which is doubled. The chosen pawn would move 10 spaces. If no beans show the mark, then there's no movement. You just skip your turn. All moves must end on an empty cell except in the 4 central spaces. If a pawn lands on one of those 4 spaces that is occupied, the pawn already there is removed and returned to the owner to start again on a later toss of 1. The sent back player must also give up 1 treasure to the active player. If a legal move can't be done, the turn is lost and nothing moves. Pawns can pass each other anywhere on the course. The 2 dark triangular spaces at the end of each arm are penalty spaces. Landing on here means the player must give up one of their treasures. Landing on either of the 2 cells at the outer ends of the arms of the board awards the active player with a free turn. Reaching the last cell on the journey must be made by exact count. When setting up for your final approach, consider the fact that 5 beans most often will turn up a result of 2 or 4. And at the end of the game, whoever is first to get all their pawns off the track wins the favor of the god of games and gets all the candy in the pot. The ultimate victory is not just to get all your pieces around the board and bear them off, but it's also to get that pot of goodies that was left for the god of games. In addition to the other special spaces around the board too, whenever a piece was borne off at the end of the route, it was traditional to take a treasure from one of the other players. And so you start the game with quite a cache of little goodies, and knowing that these are going to be taken from you, or you may be lucky enough to gain them from other players. It's not explicit, but it's likely that if you were at the game table and you ran out of goodies to contribute to the game, that you would just simply be out of the game and take your pieces off the board and go home. And I think in the 3 and 4 player games that there's a lot of opportunity for king making. That is that if you get to a point where you say, well, I'm not going to win, but I can cause this next guy to win or lose. And so there'd be a lot of behind the scenes bargaining going on too as well. It sounds to me like these games could go on for a long time. I definitely would recommend that you give Patolli a chance. But whatever you play, be sure to play every day.